There's this very popular idea in the world of spirituality and self-help that your thoughts create your reality. And what I want to explore here today is whether or not that's actually true. At face value, there's already a few problems with the phrasing. For instance, what exactly does it mean to say that you create your reality? Does that mean we each have our own separate realities? Or is there really only one reality that we all perceive and experience from our own unique standpoint? And what about the word create? Do we as individuals literally create reality, or do we merely influence it? Personally, I think it's just one of those sayings that takes a complex idea and tries to simplify it, but does so in a way that is perhaps a little bit misleading or might cause some confusion. In other words, I think that it points to something true, but in a way that we shouldn't take too literally. To me, a more accurate statement would be something like, your thoughts shape your perception of reality, or even your thoughts influence reality. These statements might not sound quite as mystical or profound, but they're much more clear and grounded. They don't require any sort of magical thinking, and they don't lead to as much confusion or misunderstanding around the subject. So let's start by exploring how our thoughts shape our perception of reality, and then we'll go on to explore how our thoughts have an actual influence on reality itself. Now, most of the time, we don't actually experience reality directly. Rather, we experience it through the filter of our beliefs and interpretations. This is why two people can witness the same event, but come away with completely different conclusions regarding what happened. A great example of this is when there's a public debate, whether it's political or philosophical or about some other issue entirely. But what I've noticed is that both sides typically walk away thinking that their side won. And it's not because of what was said so much as what everyone already believed before the whole thing took place. And this happens to all of us in all kinds of situations. We view the situation through the lens of our fears, our desires, our past experiences and expectations. And because of this, our thoughts shape how we see the world, how we interpret situations and experiences, as well as how we feel at any given moment. In this sense, our thoughts do create our subjective reality, but not reality itself. But there is a way in which our thoughts also have an influence on reality that goes beyond mere perception. They shape our behavior, which can in turn shape our circumstances. Your beliefs affect the choices you make, the risks you're willing to take, the people you gravitate toward, and whether or not you even recognize the opportunities that show up right in front of you. And oftentimes, our beliefs can influence our circumstances in ways that wind up reinforcing our beliefs. If, for example, you believe you're unworthy of love, you might unconsciously choose partners that treat you poorly. If you believe that you're incapable, you might never attempt to do things which you might actually be quite capable of doing if you actually tried. If you're afraid that you might lose your job, that anxiety can cause you to become more prone to accidents and mistakes, thereby increasing the chances of actually getting fired. If you assume that the world is a hostile place, you might interact with people in a way that is defensive and rude, which can provoke hostility in return, thereby confirming that belief. But there's also a positive side to this. If you believe that you are capable of learning, you're much more likely to take on challenges that help you grow. If you trust that most people are kind, you'll approach them with kindness, and you'll often receive kindness in return. If you believe that your efforts matter, you're far more likely to put in the work that leads to real progress. And if you assume that opportunities exist, you'll be far more likely to notice them when they appear. In this way, our thoughts don't literally create reality, but they do have a certain influence that tilts the probabilities in favor of what we believe. They affect our habits, our relationships, and our decisions, all of which in turn affects our lives, not through magic, but through simple cause and effect. The way we think shapes how we act, and how we act influences our circumstances. But notice how this is different from saying that thoughts literally create your reality. Because if you believe that, then you're also likely to believe that every time something unfortunate happens to you, it's somehow your own fault. And that may be true in some cases, but certainly not in all. There are countless factors well beyond our personal control that influence our lives, such as other people's choices, natural events, unexpected losses, illnesses, accidents, and perhaps even random chance. And our thoughts don't override those things. All they can really do is determine how we respond to them. And this is why I think the phrase, "your thoughts create your reality," can be misleading. It implies far more power than any of us actually possess. And it can lead people to blame themselves for things that were never their fault. But even if we can understand what is really meant by it, or to express the idea more accurately, it points to something that can be genuinely helpful. It reminds us that even though there is so much beyond our control, we're not entirely powerless. We still have some degree of influence, and learning how to use that influence wisely can make a significant difference in our lives and in the world around us. Our beliefs can hold us back or help us to move forward. They can create problems for us or help us to find solutions. Our interpretation of situations shapes our emotional state. The stories we tell ourselves determine the possibilities we see and the ones we overlook or ignore. So while your thoughts may not create reality, they certainly influence the way you move through it. And in the end, the real question is about whether or not we're aware of the beliefs we carry and how they influence our lives. Because with awareness, we can observe the way our thoughts affect us and choose the ones that are healthier and more supportive of the life we want to live.